Well, hello there, everyone. Here, show you right here is like the group work kind of activity right here. As you see right here is I went ahead and sketch right here as an example right here of a group of classmates, and knowing about them like that these could be just a group of you say girls and boys. You have right here is the girls, and then along with the boys, you say variety of girls and boys, and about 12, 13 of them all in a group. And what you see right here is knowing about that you have right here the front row that could contain about 2 girls and 3 boys, something like that, and then the third row and along with the fourth row, but along with a few other students. But knowing about that, if I were to go ahead and work right here is like with the charcoal pencil and draw like say is like a type of artwork, and knowing about what the type of artwork that could more likely mean like it's like for what you're working on in class. If it's if this was like an example right here of like history class, if it was a history class or something like that, and then knowing about I'm like that we may have that situation to where that we take classes, and then knowing about I'm like that you want to go ahead and you were told once before that I'm like that your work was pretty amazing, and then on your hand that the work was pretty amazing, it was pretty incredible, but then and then by the time you get into this class course, it seems like it's a little bit different, because on your hand that knowing about I'm like that there's somebody else's work that looks a lot better than what you were able to do, that type of stuff. And I kind of kind of see that knowing about I'm like for other examples of other sources of artwork, that if it's related to like a history or if it's math or something like that, that we look at examples from other workers, or if it's students or something like that, and then like that hey that well I think this one right here looks a little bit better. I actually like that one better, or I don't really like the work I did, that type of stuff. And knowing about what's the best answer for knowing that for how other people, other viewers feel about that if you were to be working on something, if there was anything related to a history or anything like that, and then the way that we take it, knowing that we look at other people's work, and then we kind of agree that or we have our own opinion about hey, we don't like the way that this turned out, etc., etc., or I actually like this person's work better than my own, that type of stuff. And knowing about that, you have right here is an example right here of like if this was right here was like maybe a painting on a wall or something, but it's like for who a poster, I guess you can maybe call it a poster, but on your hand that you have right here is a group of classmates right here, and along with the teacher, along with, for the overhead, and knowing that if most of us have seen the overheads before, to where they would like project documents up on like a board like this right here, that they would enlarge it, enlarge the documents, and then they would show you the work and that type of stuff. The screen measurement would be at about 11, let's see here, by 2 feet, something like that they would enlarge it, so that way the class can see the work. And knowing about that, you have these students right here, knowing that like you mentioned before, besides talking about with Daydream, is knowing that each time I would walk into the classroom a lot of times, and I can maybe say that maybe this will be an example right here of me walking to the class, and then maybe taking a seat, taking a seat where from where I was seated, like in a row in the classroom. But let's just say that that a lot of times, if I would be sitting in the classroom, and let's just say if I would be sitting right here, maybe in the center, that knowing that, or maybe up here on front, but let's just say if I was right here in the center, and then thinking about, I'm like, that with anybody, I'm like wondering, that more likely right there would look more like you. Well, this right here, I guess maybe will look more like me, but I guess I can go ahead and use that as an example. But this person right behind me, but let's just say that I can go ahead and use this example. I can remember that the teacher even asked me a couple of times. I'm like working an overhead and knowing about like, would you like to go ahead and take the control, and like and sometimes they ask you if you like to go ahead and just push the button and it changes I think it was projector, and then they worked the overhead. But anyway, ask if you want to go ahead and the teacher would ask for a volunteer, to use something. It's like the controls to the VCR or the TV, that type of stuff. They were watching a video in the classroom or something like that. But anyway, a lot of times whenever I'm in class, a lot of times that I want to kind of daydream about something just to kind of get my mind off of some things about what was going on in the classroom, such as if there was anything, I'm like, daydreaming about that. Really, I used to always think that daydream about something to make it kind of look like that. I want to look, says something. How I can describe it to where that if I were to be around students and then just thinking about one of them that look cute looking, or one of them that look, I don't know if you call it hot looking or anything like that, but you have some people that you were interested in talking to in the classroom and just thinking about that, something to keep your mind on, knowing about, like something that something that you could be daydreaming about is talking about, that you some source of attention, and knowing that I'm like you have your mind focused on something, other than the fact of what was going on in the classroom, and knowing about that, and then after you're working in the classroom, and then it's like that knowing that for whatever that you're thinking about, that you kind of want to like act, cool, or this and that, that type of situation. And then, from how I can describe it, is knowing that if you're going to be in a classroom with maybe a few students that that you think are pretty cute, attractive, that type of situation, and then it's like then you start going in a daydream about that you want to walk up to them and ask them about if you like to, meet them at the park or something like that later on, that type of situation. And that, a lot of times whenever I go into a daydream, a lot of times I kept thinking about, that I want to go ahead and think about something like maybe an action movie or something like that, just to kind of think about, I'm like, that I wanted to go ahead and, just to get some attention, and just to think about this, and then talk to them about, an idea that I think of, that type of situation. But anyway, it's something that makes you feel a part of the picture it is. But anyway, it's of course it's it's about 15, about a little close to 11 o'clock here on Monday night. But let's just say that you'll be working hard in the classroom, and then the next thing you know, it's like that you're working in the classroom, and then all of a sudden that you have it to where you have here's a group of students, and with these group of students, if it's going to be mathematical type stuff, studies, that type of stuff, is knowing about that whenever if I would be walking into the classroom, but then the next thing you know, it's like for what you're thinking about, like you want to think of something to kind of impress the other students, and I can tell anybody here that a lot of the daydreaming I used to do back whenever I was young, a lot of times, if it was like what you call like a daydream, it's like if it was anything related to like a daydream, is that knowing about something that you would maybe like to impress the other students about. It's like you walk into the classroom and kind of show them like dance in front of them, or maybe show them some of your work, that type of stuff, and just that source of attention. And I'm like, really, that for whatever they're talking about in the classroom, for whatever they're talking about in the classroom, is knowing that for like for like if you want to go ahead and kind of show them show something show them something to kind of get their attention, and knowing about like that you're kind of nervous to be around this person, because you don't know what they're gonna think of if they find out that we didn't know that you can sing or something like that. But the way I usually look at it is, if I were to be in a group of in a classroom, and then knowing about, I'm like, if most students were ever wondering about that, knowing about, it's like for the work though, it's like for most of our work, is that knowing about, well, what do you call that for, like for group work, for group work to where where students don't think their work, their own work is good enough. They don't think that their own work is good enough. I usually always think this too, knowing that I'm like, you want to kind of, have like one of the best works there in the classroom, for like all the other students, that they know what they're doing and that they, don't know their studies, that type of stuff. But then whenever you start working on something, it seems like, you get stuck quite often, and, other students are working ahead, that type of stuff. But really, is it all about the fact about, like I mentioned before, about judging, or is it all about the matter of knowing about how much hard work we're willing to put into the work, on knowing about what can be improved, or like if it's the writing skills or anything like that, and knowing about that for how we judge somebody, knowing about like any comments or anything like that. In a lot of ways, though, the way I think about whenever I do my schoolwork, though, is knowing about that I get really frustrated whenever other students in the classroom, or maybe if it's at work or something like that on a job. And anybody that may say that, whenever you're at home, that's a little bit of a different story whenever you're in the classroom. Or, whenever you're at work or something, doing something, maybe in the offices or something like that, running in there, and it seems like a totally different story, because they look at you like, you messed up. Well, you didn't do it right. You were supposed to do this, and hey, that in order for the required to be what you call is like the top middle class employee, or whatever you call it, for the full-time resident of or if it's like what you call the top first class or something like that, that you had to do the assignment from the directions that are required, that you are required to put your name, to write your name on the right side or on the left side, that type of stuff, that you're required to put your initials, that type of stuff. And knowing about that you have right here is that, it's like besides the initials, though, is knowing that, whenever you're in the classroom, that a lot of times that I kind of go into a daydream, knowing about, like I mentioned before, is that to kind of get my mind off all the stress and tension going on in the classroom. Because whenever if we're going to be in class or maybe on a job, that really, you may not know everybody, and knowing that you may keep to yourself a lot of times, and knowing about that until you start talking and reaching out to other people, that type of stuff. But knowing about when your students, knowing about they don't count their own work is not good enough. But then on your hand too, for how much hard work, how much willingness. We are willing to put into the hard work. How much effort, I guess you call it, is like, for effort, how much effort, and as well as hard work, I guess we can maybe say, how much hard work and skills and talent. And some students and employees that may say that, if you were to be working something, and then the next thing you know it, that you kind of come up that situation to where that there's another example that you've seen, and then, oh, you like that better, that I didn't think about adding this or that. And really, is it all about the purpose about, that whenever you get started somewhere, it just seems like almost all the time the answers always seem like it's going to be that you could have done a much better job if you could have started this or that. How do we react at that? And knowing that some that may say that how do you react at that is just to keep practicing, to keep keep passion alive, to keep working on it, that type of stuff. But then some that may say that, you're just not good enough for it. You're just not good enough for it, and you're just going to say that you're not going to continue to work on it. You're going to go ahead and move on to another hobby or another skill, that type of stuff. But a lot of ways, the way I think about it, though, is that really for what's required to be a part of the group, and then as well as understanding other people's work and knowing about, for most of my childhood life, I can remember that knowing about that every time I do some of my work, and I would like my work, and just thinking other students and teachers would like my work, and as I got older, I kept thinking about it, and I would get frustrated about it. I see other examples of other students' work, and I'll be like, some that may say that, wish my work were like that, or, I like my work to be just like that, or, how do you do that, that type of stuff. And really, about the whole purpose about learning our skills, though, is knowing about this, like what you call is like a time watch, a time watch, to where that you kind of get interested in something, and knowing about that, you may think that somebody else's work is better. And let's just say this was right here was me, and then if I would be drawing something, and what could I be drawing? I can go and use right here as a pen as an example, but what I could be drawing is maybe like a smiley face, maybe with the head on the top. And I'm like, yeah, that anybody say that, well, anybody can do that. I'm like, well, you just never know. I might use, like you say that, yeah, well, Matt's smiley face, has the one on the bow tie on the bottom, and as well as maybe the facial hair on the cheek or something like that. And then, he went ahead and drew his little, I guess if you want to call it, the character. He has his character aligned to where that has it to where he's dancing and doing a few cartwheels and that type of stuff. And compared to other students in the classroom, that they did their work as like maybe the cat face, the cat face, Chilico type design, as though you have right here is maybe like a glow-in-the-dark symbol or something like that, something that they work too. And then think about, I'm like, yeah, you see other people's examples, and you may think that that their examples are a little bit better than yours, and a lot of times it's like, you're like wondering, no, I don't even know why I'm in this class. I don't even know why I'm in this class whenever I know that I can't do half as well, as good as the other students. But then I'm sure the teachers and all them will probably say that knowing about, like, really, it's like all about the fact about them getting to know you a little bit better. And I'm sure that we can each learn about each other as time goes on, for knowing about how much willingness that we are willing to learn about each other's work, other than judging all the time. And more likely they may say that the whole part about group work is not about judging all the time. Don't judge all the time. Don't judge things before you know it, because if you do, that more likely that chances are is that it's like just to see on the important side, because one of these days, and I'm sure that each one of our work is going to be useful, and then they may say that to see the most important side could be is like that that before then that they were not very curious about the work in the first place, but then they realized later on that something came up to where now they kind of want to know a little bit more about your work. And they may say that, yeah, well, you failed to explain any further about that, for what the work that you did, you got something to work on this program, or maybe, for however it was done. And yeah, and I think that the whole purpose about knowing about, it's all about trying to develop interest. And I can go ahead and spell right here for developing interest. Develop interest. For helping others understand your work. For developing interest, if people were to develop their own interest, and for others to learn about this person, about their type of work, for what they do, for developing interest, I'm sure they say that that's good enough, for what's required. It's other than the fact about that, how much time we're willing to put into our own artwork, other than that, this is the stuff that you did ever since you were young, and thinking about, I'm like, really, that, you may think that you're the only one who can do it, and then you may see better results, but then on the other hand, too, that's like for developing interest in knowing that, there may be something that maybe somebody else didn't know about or didn't realize later on. So, really, that, for the most part, it's like for most of our sketches, if it's going to be typing skills, or they say that, that you do not copy and paste, copy somebody else's work, etc., etc. But then, on the other hand, and knowing about, like, how to work something, and then, trying to understand something, that type of stuff, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, we are on this together. We are on this together. We're, you're not alone, even though if you think that you're on your own, and that type of stuff. But the way I think about it, the most important part about it, besides, like, say, maybe a daydream, though, that knowing about that, with most of the time, that if you're going to be that type of person who's going to daydream and knowing about, like, the stuff that I remember every day I come to school and just thinking about something that kind of keep my mind focused on something, and then as well as what was going on in the classroom too, and just thinking about that, you're afraid to speak up to another student because you're afraid of what they're going to think of you, and like, hey, how's it going, or something like that, and then like that, I go, who are you, or who are you talking to, that type of stuff. But you have right here, I went ahead and drew right here, include right here is a flag. Like every morning, especially around the month of August, most schools, I guess, will be starting up maybe as of today, or maybe on Tuesday, the 12th, August the 12th or 13th. It's like, for I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, and liberty for justice and justice for all. But sing the Pledge of Allegiance, and then as well as doing other stuff in the classroom. But knowing about that, I'm sure anybody that may say, like, it would be more likely a dream where you can just walk into the classroom and people are glad to see you. Walk into the classroom and people are glad to see you, and they want to get to know your work and that type of stuff, other than walk into the classroom, everybody's doing their own thing, and then they tell you that, hey, you're supposed to bring this, you're supposed to provide that, or you're supposed to complete this or that, and nobody else is having that problem except you, that type of stuff. But maybe at times we go through those rough situations to where, if we're going to be in a group work, working on something, and knowing about, if it's history class, and they may say that it seems like a totally different story whenever you're in class and working on something, and people are, students or other people are giving you a hard time about not following the directions right, that type of stuff, is to say, give me one good reason why I shouldn't daydream. Because on your hand too, to knowing about daydreaming, it kind of gets my mind off of stress and pressure, to where that if something's going on in the classroom, and I try to keep it under control, other than the fact about getting all mad about something, that type of stuff. But on your hand, and knowing about, I'm like, or I would encourage anybody knowing about that I'm sure that there's a lot more to the group, a class, to the class. It's like a lot more to it, to the group, and knowing about for who does what very well, that type of stuff, and knowing about for the developing interest to where that each student that learns a lot about somebody else, and as well as what you talked about in the classroom, and knowing about for the time recorded, knowing about that if it's going to be a daydream, or if it's going to be about that you kind of like what you call, anybody say that you kind of call it a show off, and knowing about that that you a certain power, and we may have heard this before about that, if maybe the doctor mentioned it, about that you may have seen it on movies, about is there such thing as a certain power to where that a human being that has this certain power to where a super brain power. And I can tell anybody here that I kept thinking about that. That's something maybe I like to have too, is super brain power. The type of brain power to where that I can go ahead and have it to where that I can have a mind of my own, knowing about that I have that certain skill to where maybe a few other students are kind of like interested about that type of stuff, and thinking about walking to class and and then you know, 3 or 4 other students are kind of like, hey, you know, how'd you do that? You know, how'd you develop that skill, or you know, how'd you learn to dance like that? You know, that type of stuff. But in a lot of ways, I'm sure some kids would more likely say that they dream about having a real special talented skill, such as, you know, the dance, or if it's you know, writing and cursively or something like that, something about working programs, that type of stuff. But the only problem is knowing about that you know, that they want to learn the skill without making a mistake, and then without, you know, having the most embarrassing part of their life, knowing about that they were working on it and then something went wrong, you know, and then it's like, you know, the students are like, oh, ha ha, you messed up, or something like that. But anyway, but talk about, say, for group work, and knowing about that, you know, for each student, that more likely, if they were to get a job one of these days, working in the same lab, you know, doing the same thing for what they research, you know, for what they learned in the classroom, that knowing about, we may each have our own set of memory for what we remember about what we learned about in class, you know, that type of stuff, about the you know, assignments, and as well as the for whatever that, you know, that they do, you know, the students do, and then the important responsibility, and knowing about for developing interest, and knowing about that, yeah, whenever you look at other people's work and you think that it's better than your own, you know, that type of stuff. But really about how much hard work are we willing to put into working on it, you know, compared to judging all the time and saying that, you know, I'm not going to be considered a professional. I'm not no professional, and I know what a professional is, but I'm not that type of person. But what do parents usually say, and what do teachers, doctors, and counselors usually say about the best of words about that, about, you know, what's required to be a professional, and knowing about, you know, how much willingness are we willing to put into learning something new, and then on the other hand too, that knowing about, you know, teaching somebody else that skill. You know, maybe not everybody else is going to have that same skill as what we do, you know, especially with me and, you know, a few other students. You know, a few other students that they may say that there may be something I may know that they may not know either. You know, like, you know, to share it with them as well. You know, some students and teachers as well. They say that, you know, that they may actually think that your work's pretty interesting too. You know, they don't think it's horrible. You know, they never did. You know, they may say that at times, you know, that it could, you know, it can get approved later on, but, you know, for what they think it's, you know, maybe horrible, more likely saying about, you know, maybe if you don't keep trying, and knowing about, you know, it's, you know, that's just too bad. If you didn't keep trying, you know, keep working hard on it, you know, to succeed, you know, in your goals. You know, it's like knowing about, I'm like, yeah, you know, whenever we're in school, that we learn something, you know, most important, and knowing about that each student, that they say that, you know, yeah, if you're going to be going on a daydream tour, that you find a cute looking girl or a cute looking guy in the classroom, and then you want to walk up to them after class and maybe ask them, you know, to go out to lunch with them, or having brunch or supper, whichever it is, or maybe a snack, or join, you know, meet them at the park or something like that, you know, meet them at the library, and, you know, develop a relationship with them, you know, that type of stuff, romantic relationship, you know, that type of stuff. But in a lot of ways, the way I think about it, though, is the whole purpose about you know, the group work, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that knowing about, it's interesting. It's a very interesting story, and maybe a little bit embarrassing too, about how you met somebody. You know, it's like, yeah, that you met them. You actually met them maybe in the papers, and then you met them on the social media site, and then actually, by the time you actually meet them in person, and it seems like that there's like a book of questions. There's a mystery of corrections. It's like mystery of corrections. I know about, it's like with questions. I know, I'm like, hey, you know, hey, I remember you. Yeah, we were in science class together. Yeah, we were in math class together. You know, if you remember that assignment that we worked on, if you remember the teacher's name, you know, that type of stuff. But the way I would think about, though, is that the whole part about knowing about, with some students, that they may say that, you know, how do we answer the question to where that, you know, for the group at work, and knowing about that you know, whenever we first start working on something, that we may think that somebody else's work is just a little bit better, and knowing about, like, yeah, that they go by saying about, you know, try to learn it. learn how to use that skill. Don't copy and paste it. Don't try to take it without the person's permission, that type of stuff. But just learn the skill. And then they say that that if you take time to learn it, I'm sure that say it will pay the price of its own. Knowing about that type of skill that more likely that you may have too. They say that for how much time for developing interested. Knowing about other students that they may say that, hey, you may think that your work is bad compared to the other person's work. Well, that's not true either, because I'm sure that they say that that with your work, that more likely that somebody else that maybe could find it, and they say that yeah, a lot of your work that you didn't think that was useless. You thought it was useless because of the fact because there was a lot of misspellings, or there's a lot of typo errors or something like that going on there. But in a lot of ways that they say that yeah, we may learn by our mistakes, but do we have to discard? Do we have to get rid of our mistakes? Knowing about old assignments, whichever it is, and knowing about anything that more likely is pretty precious, even though they say that yeah, it was not completed, or it was not complete, or it was done incorrectly, that type of stuff. But knowing for a group work, and knowing about is like for each person to kind of get to know each other. If it's a group of boys and a group of girls, that type of stuff, and knowing about how well the teacher knows the class as well, is knowing about, okay, well, now since we met, we can now work with each other, and we're going to be working on this, on this problem, or this assignment, or this type of job, that type of stuff. Because I'm sure that anybody say that really about that there are probably millions of different ideas and plenty of opportunities, and knowing about anybody say that yeah, once you get started, I'm sure it'll be hard to stop whenever you get involved with a career that uses your ideas for what you know and what you can do, and those special talents. It's like what you call maybe those special powers, also knowing about those skills for how we use our brain and how we use our our talented skills as well. But then so far as knowing about that if we want to act like if we want to kind of give you that tease to where if we want to act like a show off, if you want to act cool in front of if you want to kind of like a daydream for like that certain reason, to where that if you see somebody attractive in the classroom and you want to reach out to them, that type of stuff, and just thinking about what am I going to say to them. But knowing about knowing about for that type of imagination is that the type of imagination that more likely they can get to where people can get to know you well as your work, and just kind of thinking about really that I'm sure that there's going to be what you call that mystery story, to where it gets real juicy, knowing about by the time somebody else finds out about something, and they're going to probably say that if you think that there ain't no common sense story, and knowing about what you have to share, well, I'm afraid that's not true, because knowing about that there was something that more likely that they are extremely curious about, or knowing about that type of skill that that more likely they didn't know, and now they're trying to develop interest, or knowing about that hey, can you teach me that? How'd you do that? Hey, I seen your work. I seen your work on TV, that type of stuff. It's like so far as talk about with the excitement. It's all I'm about to say for the whole work and knowledge. They say for developing interest. They say for the group work collectivity.